Welcome to the 28th reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. My almost non-existent social life. After the school holidays, my brother would be attending Wilson Marriage with me. I suppose he ought to have gone to the closest school, St. Helena, as I also could have done, within easy walking distance of our house, whereas we caught a bus up in the high street to take us to my school. I must have talked Mum into enrolling him there, possibly because I couldn't bear to face another new school. I discovered years later that he didn't take the 11+ exam because of gaps in his education, no doubt from the time spent at Mildenhall when so many things went awry. This move of my brother to Wilson Marriage started off my gallant attempt at a social life, something I desired with all my heart. I saw David as my opportunity to be introduced to the girls in his class. As soon as I declared myself as his older sister, I immediately attained a measure of respect from them, some of them being 2 years younger than me, as my late October birthday made me one of the older girls in my class. I was more comfortable with these 11-year-old entrants, not as catty as my peers. For a while, David endorsed me, so to speak, and acted as my go-between. Eventually, I focused on his male friends and probably embarrassed him. I hung around when his friends came to the house. I had no pride when it came to my need for companionship. I was loneliness personified and didn't know that my very availability was a turn-off. I snared 3 girlfriends through him, although each one would leave me. I didn't snare one boy. Norma, the first girl, and I were physically so alike. Several girls asked us if we were twins, what I would have given for that to be true. She didn't need another sister, however, as she already had more than one and a couple of brothers. I took to going to her house every day after school. Her mother fed me and allowed me to watch television. She took me to the pictures with her family, and so it didn't take long for me to imagine I belonged to them. Her father accepted me and never once told me to leave his house and go home to be with my own family. Then this lovely friendship ended as Norma's family moved away. I missed them all so much. That year, I came close to having a real sister in the form of a Hungarian refugee. With refugees pouring into the country after the Soviet invasion, the government made an appeal for families to take in children. I begged my parents to accept a girl, to give me the sister I said I'd always wanted. For the longest time, the question of whether they would or would not went back and forth like a seesaw, but I clung to the belief that my sister would come. I imagined she and I moving up into the attic. Din-Din, who slept up there in his old brass bed, would have to either move in with my brother or take his chances on the floor in the front room or whatever. I gave no thought to the money needed to feed and clothe her, the responsibility my parents would have for another child, and the strain it would put on our already tense family interactions. My need for fulfillment dominated my reasoning. If I hadn't made such a fuss, my sister might have arrived. Carol, the second girl I befriended, came from Toronto, Canada. She had taken ballet classes there, and this attracted me to her in a huge way. In early 1956, before Carol arrived, the entire school went to the Hippodrome to see the filmed version of Romeo and Juliet performed by the Bolshoi Ballet Company. Unaware before that such beauty of movement and music existed, I sat in my seat entranced, while my peers talked and fidgeted, obviously not moved by it at all. The classical music, none of which I'd heard before, so touched me it mimicked physical pain in its intensity. I walked home as if in a dream, not knowing how I could ever do the ordinary things of life again. How can I wake up the next morning, go to school, do all the boring lessons, then go home to my house and my boring life? That film reawakened the passion I'd had as a small child for music and dance. I became infatuated with ballet, but my parents did not have the money for lessons, and this time no nice lady offered to pay for them. I borrowed books on ballet from the public library and attempted to teach myself the basic beginning positions. I set up my own dance studio in the front room, placing a sign in the window inviting neighborhood girls to join me, but no one did, and practiced every day, convincing myself I could make it as a dancer. Maybe I could be accepted into one of the schools on my talent alone. I read biographies of dancers, their struggles, their dreams. I lived in the magical world of ballet and barely thought of anything else. I often peeked through the crack in the wall of the local dancing school to watch the girls go through their routines. And in summertime, when the school put on a display in the castle park or at other venues, I found a seat in the front row and stayed there, watching the same performance over and over whilst my family took in other sights. At school, for a while, I managed to dissociate from my problems and put all my energy into my love of dancing. Carol didn't know my primary interest wasn't in her, but the fact she had taken classes in ballet and therefore could teach me, or so I thought in my ignorance of such matters. Still, despite my selfish motives, we stayed friends, and I gradually became a fixture around her house. I went for sleepovers and allowed her mother to fuss over me. Once she discovered I didn't have a bathroom at home, she would run me a bubble bath and let me stay in it for as long as I wanted. Not what Carol had in mind when she invited me over. Carol also had a television set, and I spent a lot of time at her house watching musical shows. Her artistic parents, commercial artist father and stage actress mother, composed the lure of her family. Unfortunately, just as our friendship appeared to be giving me the desires of my heart, an identity of sorts, all wrapped up in a fantasy, Carol ruined it by telling me I wasn't flexible enough to do ballet. I was devastated, frustrated with my insistence on her putting me through the paces every time we saw each other. She tired of the teacher role I assigned her. A not quite 12-year-old didn't need that pressure. She started spending time with girls in her class, and I became jealous. I wanted her all to myself, but could feel her slipping away from me. Instead of allowing her the pleasure of other friends, I launched a full-blown attack on her by spreading lies around school, making her life miserable. By then, I knew I'd lost her. Our friendship joined the wreckage pile of broken relationships haunting my life. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.